welcome Friends Rora's friends and others. Delighted to have the opportunity to begin the presentations for this week. I wanted to, before going into the presentation itself, to remind us, have us think about for a couple of moments, two things. And they both really tie to the topic regarding love. One, since we're here in the season of Christmas celebrated by Christians throughout the world, and one of those elements that is very much embedded in kind of the Christian theology is the idea of the virgin birth, or the concept of the virgin birth. And my thought is that we can all really understand and embrace that, not simply as it relates to the personages, the simple personages of the Master Jesus, but the reality is that all of us are the result of something other than the physical activity of our parents. Right? The physical activity of our parents may give rise to our bodies, right? But the reality is that which is us, the soul essence, the personality, the consciousness, that I am aspect of our being, doesn't come from our parents, right? It's a direct extension of that divine source of our Creator. So that story of the virgin birth really does surely contain it a truth that doesn't simply relate to Jesus, but also relates to all of humanity. That yes, our physical bodies are the result of the union of our parents, but the self is not a product, and never been kind of the result of or touched by the physical matter. It comes from something else. It simply inhabits the body. So that's one thought as we think about that virgin birth, to see that it really speaks to our own existence, who and what we are as well. The other thought, and this really ties into the topic for tonight, excuse me, and that has to do with the great privilege we have as humanity, this God-given privilege, the privilege that our Creator is bestowed upon us. And one of those privileges, and perhaps one of the most meaningful, is we actually have the ability to know good and evil. And good and evil itself is a really interesting topic, and I won't try to summarize that for the point of this, but understand that when we compare to other animals, pretty much most of the animal kingdom, they only simply act out of instinct. They don't know good and evil. So we have been somehow gifted with this higher level of consciousness that surely has to be a reflection of the Creator. This very lofty privilege that's been extended to us. And it is something that, upon reflection, you may equally want to give thanks for, because it is a privilege that other creatures and beings, or the other creatures on our planet, have not had bestowed upon them. So we can see it's an evolutionary step in this kind of expression of the Word being made flesh, as very often it's referred to in the Christian settings. So we have this, and to appreciate it as a privilege that most of the living forms don't share on this planet with us, but appreciate it as a gift. It's almost an expression of the belief or the faith, and those are maybe strange words to put in this, but the belief in the faith in the value of this creation that we are. Right. So anyway, and in many ways, and this is really where this discussion of the study of love goes, is if perhaps the simplest way perhaps to describe good and evil for this purpose is simply that which turns toward love or expresses love and that which doesn't. Lightly cannot be simpler in reality. Its expression and the myriad expressions of it obviously are innumerable, but let's use that of we have been given this access to this position, unlike the other life expressions on the planet, and the choice that we have, and we're constantly faced with, in small and large measure, is that between turning toward love or turning away from love. So just some thoughts around this topic and some things that may be worthwhile just to reflect upon. So the topic for tonight, and I'm going to go into a screen share, and hopefully I think we've got it. I'm going to know in a second once I do this. Yes, okay. So the topic again, study of love, and the kind of intro points or point is that this word love is all around us, right? Likely you couldn't possibly count all the words that have been written about love. Poetry, novels, all sorts of places. And it's also a word that is likely repeated hundreds of millions of times daily. Exchange between family members and loved ones and others of I love you, and all those variations on it. So we hear it everywhere. And very often we're saying it in all sorts of places to all sorts of people. That term love is also used countless times to describe our relationship to other things in our lives beside our quote unquote loved ones, right? Our pets or animal companions, our favorite foods, clothing. I love that dress. I love that suit. I love that whatever. Homes and other objects. So love is surely a much used term. Little Google search on this came up that estimated that 100 million songs have been recorded about love. That's a lot of songs. And if we look at much of what is popular music, we see that love is very commonly the theme. We also kind of know that from experience that love is a very powerful force in our lives. It makes you do right, makes you do wrong, etc., as the songs go. But here's something that's in our lives, and most people would say they wouldn't want to have to give up living without love, or to give up living and not have love. One thing about love, you might say, is that it embodies connection. Almost all of these examples are something where clearly we're attracted to the object, whether it be a person or a thing, and we feel some connection with it. We also know that humans can love as well as be loved. And those are two different phases of love in our lives. And they kind of play related roles, though not identical roles. And lastly, and there's likely 20 other points one could make about love. I'm sure some of them come into your minds. Is that there are degrees of love. I love this more than that. I love this person more than that person, right? So it's not kind of something you can put in a glass jar and beaker and measure exactly. Like I say, love comes in 31 flavors, just like Baskin-Robbins ice cream. Here are some of those. People love pizza. I love chocolate. We love our families. I had a cat for many, many years. I love deeply. Yep. We love our children, love our spouse, our partners. I love my work. You love your work. Some people love playing a sport. Right? We love our friends. People make love. And then we think about self-love. You know, what does that mean? And how do we capitalize on that? And perhaps most importantly is impersonal love. Though these are all important, I mean, maybe that's not the right characterization, but impersonal love does play a role that's somewhat transcends even these other examples. So then the question comes up, and I come to this here because I think in the everyday experience of love, and we hear it so much in music and poetry, is that people want to be loved. There's a million songs, a zillion songs that express people's desire to be loved. So I thought it might be worth a little reflection on why people want to be loved. We want to be the object of love, not simply loving something else, but we want to be loved ourselves. Well, one reason is love brings security. To human beings, typically, love means security. It may mean many, many things, but one of the things that it means is security. Kind of says that we will not be alone in facing the uncertainties of life, the difficult things, etc., that might come up. Health, financial, whatever the case may be, emotional. But if we're loved, we're not going to be alone. Right? And in many ways, for better or worse, people chase being loved through perhaps most of their lives. Right? From the time we're small children, we want to be loved. Right? Why do we want to be loved? Because we've come to recognize that that means getting fed by somebody. That means keeping a roof over our head. And a little bit of how that happens is that, you know, our mother, our father, our grandparent, our caregiver says something to the effect to us, likely many times, don't worry, mommy will take care of you. Mommy loves you. So from then on, you're like, hey, do you love me? Love is the ticket for someone being there, taking care of you to meet your needs. Interesting enough, as adults, when we no longer necessarily need someone to get us, you know, a bottle or keep a roof over our head or change a diaper, but we're asking others in our lives, do you love me? Right. That love there, it means security to us. So even after we no longer need those very basic things of existence, we are still seeking to be loved as a sense of security. I think you'll find that most of what drives that desire that people have comes out of the need for security and this implication that if someone loves us, we will have somebody there with us in our corner, someone we can turn to when we need someone. Love also comes up, you know, in the spiritual life of individuals, religions, etc. And it's interesting because it's a very different perspective than of being loved. This dwelling much more on loving. This comes from 1 Corinthians, written by the Apostle Paul, Christian faith. That if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm a noising gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, which is quite a bit there, right? If I have all faith, what more is there to ask, you would think? So as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. Wow, that's really putting love up on quite a pedestal, it would seem. Right? Something must be going on there. And I would say this, anyone who speaks that and says it with that type of conviction, likely knows of what they speak. Jesus said a bit before Paul, when asked about, good master, tell me which is the greatest commandment of the commandments. He said, love the Lord, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. You go, wow. If I'm going to say that's it, and if okay, you get Jesus, who clearly was a fairly, obviously a highly illumined individual, right? And said, these are the things to do. These are the most important things to do. You really have to move love to the front seat. Didn't say accumulate wealth, didn't say work hard, it didn't say have faith, a lot of other things that one more traditionally, materially, that one puts as more of a priority. But says something as intangible that you can't put in a basket, you can't put a nail in it, you can't grab it. But love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself. If we took these two clearly illumined statements, it gives us a lot of guidance. They come from clearly illumined individuals, and Jesus, we have no, pretty much across the board, no doubt of that, no matter what one's faith is initially, that this thing on love is apparently the most important thing to do, can be. I wanted to also bring up our wonderful and beautiful Rosicrucian chant. And this gets a bit to the first things about wanting to be loved, but it also carries with it kind of an indelible comfort about the love we seek, which typically we're seeking from other people. A love that knoweth of no fear, a love that sheds a joyous tear, love that makes me whole and free, such love shall keep and hallow me. This is the love of the Creator. So we crave for love. There's a reason we crave for love, though we tend to look for it in the wrong place. Right? So this fairly universal craving for love, it's not actually in vain, it's not superfluous, it's not misguided. It's perhaps where we're looking for it is where we're in error typically. Now, I like to say the Greeks tried to sort things out with love, right? Because we know you got everything from loving pizza or feta salad, perhaps in the Greek day, to loving your family and loving your car. Okay, So the Greek philosophers kind of said, characterizes 4 types of love. Some people have made more, but these are 4 pretty good buckets that most of us can relate to. So first, eros. This is romantic love, named after the Greek god of love and fertility. It's described as erotic and passionate love. And a lot of what we hear on the radio, actually we're streaming because none of us have radios, but we stream or we see on TV programs, etc., is about this passionate love, this romantic love. There are books after books and books after books at any bookstore that have their focus on romantic love. Millions of books are sold annually focused on that. Then there's philia, or filial love, that very often we hear it said in English. And this is the love between close friends or brothers. It's described as affectionate and friendly love. One thing that's very much part of it is reciprocity is usually an important element. Right? There's an expectation, I will do for you, you will do for me, and that is what we expect of each other, and that's what kind of sustains that relationship and that love. The fourth one is I'm going to pronounce it storge, and this one is unconditional love, such as love between parents and children. I say perhaps most notably maternal love, though it also obviously paternal as well, but the maternal one very often also shows the greatest evidence of this type of love. So this is an unconditional love. So, and then you have agape. Agape is unconditional love, but it's universal. Whereas storge, the maternal love, is this love, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but it's very much focused on that family connection, very often between, again, a parent and a child, and a mother or a child. But then agape is this true universal love, such as love for strangers, nature, or God. It's described as selfless, unconditional, sacrificial love. Right? Stevie Wonder's song, "True Love Asks for Nothing." Christian thinkers call it charity. It can be said to encompass the modern concept of altruism. So that's kind of with the help of the Greeks, kind of sorting it out. So I wanted to focus for a little bit on 2 of these forms of love. The first, maternal love, and the other, agape. Because both of these reflect a deeper level of soul consciousness and really dissolve the boundaries between ourselves and others. And we can see a little bit more if we look into it. So when we look at maternal love, in many ways, we'd say shows the potential of love. The self has expanded to include the child. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, we see here, love thy child as thyself. And I think in 99.99% of cases, that is the mother's experience with the child. She loves that child like she loves herself. And I think we've all witnessed manifestations or expressions of that. Through good times and bad times, doesn't matter what, love doesn't change. And no matter what the actions of the offspring, right? No matter whether they do something good or don't do something good, they do something terrible or not so terrible, right? The mother's love doesn't change. Mother still loves that child. This is why, again, talking about maternal love showing the potential of love, what love can manifest as, because we see it over and over again in this maternal love. So love for who the person is, not for what they look like or even do, right? And it's likely the purest and most selfish love we witness in everyday life, right? Though it's personal, again, it's around that mother and child, it does show the unbounded capacity of love, right? We see it as love without limit. None of us think there's something so bad that a child could do. where a mother would say, I no longer love my child. All right. So that shows us this unbounded capacity of love. The other one is agape love. So this love is also selfless, sacrificial, unconditional, like a mother's love is toward the child. It expects nothing in return. It is love as expression. It is simply an outpouring. It's impersonal, like the sun, right? As Matthew from the Christian scriptures says, he said that you may be the children of your Father who is in heaven, which is in heaven, for he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and unjust, but then on the unjust. Right? So it is impersonal. Cosmic law, cosmic love has no favorites. It is impersonal, and it's not defined by who the individual is, and it is not constrained by the personal experience of the person who is expressing the love. And this is why Martinist, and our Grandmaster made reference to the Martinist order and it becoming available for new members around this time of year, is one of the foundational concepts in Martinism is this notion of impersonality, right? Where we take the personal history of ourselves out of it and we make our love unconditional and impersonal. They say in religious terms, it's used to describe God's love for humanity and creation. So I want to tell you a little bit about what happens to our brains when we love. And this is going to take us into kind of now the core, the meat of what we all can do here, understanding this. So the neurobiology of love. So basically scientists, researchers have done lots of PET scans, magnetic resonance, MRI scans, a variety of different scans to look at the brain's activity when speaking, hearing music, and a variety of other things, including the feeling of love. And one of the things that love does is it reduces the activity of the amygdala. And the amygdala is a structure in the brain that generally is considered to be as part of the more primal part of the brain, right? The limbic system of the brain. This is sometimes people call the reptilian brain, right? The first kind of type of brain structure to manifest in kind of living creatures, of mammals particularly, or not protozoa, et cetera, right? So it reduces the activity of the amygdala. The amygdala mediates our fear, our fight or flight response, right? It's there on guard, right? On guard to protect us and our body. Love, when they have this feeling of love, it dampens the brain activity also in areas of the brain that recognize difference and separation between ourselves and others. Believe it or not, there's a part of the brain that basically kind of really helps us identify ourselves as being separate from something else. So there's a part of the brain that focuses on that. When one is experiencing love, that area of the brain reduces, its activity is reduced in it. The amygdala and areas around that connect with it are also very much tied into looking for differences, because differences, things that are different, the reaction is fear. The kind of most primal reaction is fear. It's different. It's not what I'm familiar with. I don't know what it is. I must protect myself. So the amygdala and other areas of the brain that kind of paying attention go into kind of that mode, and love dampens their activity. It's like a drug. It functions like a drug. It also reduces the activity in our frontal cortex of the brain, which reduces negative emotions and judgmental thinking. So think about that. It's pretty fascinating, right? Because one of the things that we know interferes with our spiritual growth and development, right, is judgmental thinking. Love reduces that activity in that part of the brain and other kind of negative emotions, anger, jealousy, etc. Love also reduces activity in the brain areas that make moral judgments, which is quite fascinating. I don't know if you watch The Sopranos. Anybody here watch The Sopranos? But there's lots of TV shows. Actually, I think there's Breaking Bad and others. Kind of U.S. TV shows where the character really is not necessarily a great guy or a woman, but very often a guy, right? So Tony Soprano in The Sopranos is a murderer. He has people executed. He does all these bad things, but we kind of get to know him and feel him and understand him. We feel drawn to him, and somehow or another, we don't condemn him. He's the guy we like, right? Even though he did bad things, but because we feel connected to him, we don't go, oh, I want nothing to do with you. It's reprehensible. So love reduces activity in the brain that makes moral judgments. And recognizing the subjectivity of moral judgments, you can see where that could be a plus. Now, love and empathy activate similar responses in the brain. Same areas of the brain, love and empathy both kind of activate. And that we'll see why it's important later. And by the way, romantic love does most of what these other areas do, right? But what's different, though, is romantic love also diminishes the capacity to reason. So when people say the person is crazy in love, right, or love is crazy, or will make you do crazy things, that actually is the brain. The brain is affected, and our reasoning capacity is diminished in romantic love. So the neurobiology, we're going to hack our brains, is what the goal of this study of love is tonight, is looking at how to hack our brains to serve us. Now, love elicits release of dopamine, oxytocin, and other feel-good chemicals, right? So you'll see there's a whole bunch, actually 2 or 3 others in addition. So that's what happens, and this is where we get these sensations of pleasure and euphoria in response to love. So let's kind of take advantage of that, and we will come back to how to do that. So let's for a moment look at the mystic's view of love. Right? Now, the mystic knows that love that she or he seeks can ultimately only be found within her or his own being. And let's kind of look at why. Right? Human love can be fickle and is transitory by nature. So it can be fickle, right? People in a romantic relationship, they love you now, they don't love you later, right? You used to love them, they don't love you, right? So it's fickle. People's emotions change, even with friends, right? Even when we look at a mother's love, right? Your mother's likely going to predecease you. Not always. Didn't happen in my case, but in most cases, your mother will die before you do, or your parents will, right? So that love that made you feel safe and secure is transitory in nature. Mystics kind of know that. Now, love also, mystics know that love naturally arises, we de-emphasize differences. Right? As we see neighbor as thyself, right? We see those similarities, this warmth, this affection, this openness kind of arises in us, right? So the mystic expands the expression of love beyond the personal self and its interest, right? So we know people, I mean, Jesus gave the injunction, love your enemies, love those that hate you. That's impersonal love. We all love, he said, you love the people who love you. Well, that's easy, right? We love the people who do for us, and et cetera, et cetera. That's easy. But love those who are your enemies, so to speak, or those who do not see things as you see them, right? The mystic knows we must expand the expression of love beyond our personal self and its interest. Love, in turn, expands the idea of self, right? So a mother sees that child as herself. So now that self now has become two human beings, not just one. And when you add it to there's three kids, and then there's the spouse, the family, that we can see that love can expand our sense of self to embrace not only our own family, our community, our nation, humanity, and all living things. So love has that capacity to do that. Jesus said, whatever you do unto the least of mine, you do unto me, right? That's another example. Love also puts the mystic into harmony with the underlying oneness of the cosmic creation. And really, this is based on that the creation is one. And we know whether it's a physicist saying that everything that materially manifests all comes out of the same essence, the quantum field. Or we take it from a mystical point of view of realizing there's the immanent presence of the divine in everything that's expressed, in all things by their nature. So as we realize this oneness, which is where in my earlier comment at the beginning saying the choice we have this beautiful thing we've been gifted of knowing good and evil, and that in many ways it's do we express love or do we express separation? That's it. Because love puts you in harmony with the creation, which is one. Separation pulls you out of that harmony. And that is costly and generally not comfortable and doesn't feel too good. So why does the mystical student cultivate impersonal love, right? Well, because it can be a tool for our mystical growth. Very, very important, valuable resource that we can have. It moves us from the animal and ego consciousness to expanded consciousness, right? So the animal or ego consciousness is focused on the material self. That's kind of its job. It's like an animal in the jungle. It's looking out for, hey, how do I survive, right? The ego is just kind of a more thoughtful, erudite, educated version of that same animal instinct, right? It does it through other tools than just its teeth, right? We don't have such sharp teeth, so it wouldn't work well, right? So it moves us though from the animal and ego conscious to expanded conscious. It shuts down judgmental thoughts and the related neurological activity. I mean, that solves a problem for us, right? We're as mystical students, we're trying to get rid of, get rid of that judgmental stuff, right? Because that judgmental stuff is trash at the end of the day, right? Not good for us, not good, takes us out of the, tumor with the hole, right? Well, love actually shuts it down neurologically, the emotions of love. So we're kind of, we're doing a real good love, expressing love, and at the same time, we're shutting off something that's really kind of a negative. It also, impersonal reduces the I-thou separation, and that is the same thing in the brain. So when I was mentioned before, that the notion of self and other, right? Love reduces that sense of I'm separated from something. If you look at people with a number of mystical experiences, one of the things is feeling no separation, this blending into the whole, right? So love, impersonal love, particularly reduces I-thou separation, because that the I-thou is the separation, I and thou, right? I and other, I and the rest of reality and creation. So as thoughts and actions are motivated by impersonal love, right, we create positive karma that produces positive effects in our lives. As they say, what's not to like, right? So a key element of the mystic experience is the increasing realization of the oneness of creation. So that's the fruit of it. So one could say love is the emotional manifestation of oneness. That's what it feels like. So when we're experiencing more of this feeling of oneness with another person, with a group, whatever the case may be, we feel that is love. We call it love. But it's that really that oneness that we've given. Here's what it feels like. It's love. It feels good. It's love. So let's look at how to cultivate. I'm over time. I'm sorry, but I think I am. No. Anyway, Maybe not. All right, cultivating empathy and impersonal love. That's what we're going to do next. So now we're going to try and figure out, okay, we know this is good for us. We know that that we can actually tone down that limbic animal self-preservation instinct, which is built on fear, right? Because, better to be afraid if you're just looking for self-preservation, right? So how we can tone that down in many ways, we can call this hacking the brain a little bit, right? So to cultivate impersonal love, we must overcome the innate protectiveness of the animal brain, which is centered in the amygdala and the limbic system of the brain, right? So we're going to hack our brains. And the techniques that I'm going to share with you really come from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT as it's known, because there are techniques in it. And interesting enough, CBT is one of actually the best documented, but really likely one of the only ones at this stage of psychotherapeutic interventions that actually has been demonstrated to change the brain. So when people go to therapy, they go to CBT, they've done brain scans before and after, it actually changes the brain, activity of the brain, which is really what we're looking at. So these techniques can be effective for us to get us to our goal. So empathy and love reduce the activity of the amygdala, which is what we're, trying to get out of that fight or flight mode and thinking everybody else is, like this, rather than let me bring forth love and reach the love in them that exists in them as well. So empathy and love reduce the activity of the amygdala and the parts of the brain that make us judgmental and to feel separate from others, which we talked about, in the previous slides. Okay, so we want to do that, right? We want to kind of tone down the amygdala, which is all fight or flight, fear kind of based. And we want to tone down the parts of the brain that make us judgmental and feel separate from others, right? That'll help get us to our goal. So the goal is to replace negative thoughts of separateness and judgment with positive feelings of empathy and love. And I think likely most of us, encounter either in the monographs or in some Rosicrucian books, the Rosicrucian approach to creating new habits, right? Replace it with a better habit, right? You don't just try and let me just see if I stomp it out and make it go away. No, let's replace it with something better. So our goal here is to replace negative thoughts of separateness and judgment with positive feelings of empathy and love. And to quote a minister I once heard in some church someplace a long, long time ago, who said, talking about he felt what's inside of people, said there are two bulldogs in everybody. Kind of one, one of the generous kind one, the other one is kind of a little more animalistic one. And he said, whichever bulldog we feed the most wins. Right? So we got to go feed the good bulldog. So to cultivate impersonal love, empathy is the key. It really paves the way for impersonal love. It will manifest because when you kind of bring about this empathy, love is what kind of naturally blossoms and blooms up. So let's look at some cognitive behavioral therapy exercises that we now will use for cultivating empathy. We're going to use it for our own, use the tool, but build our own little thing with it, right? So to cultivate empathy, try to imagine the other person's perspective. So these are going to be kind of very practical things as you kind of see where, and actually because we live in a somewhat polarized country right now, there's lots of opportunities to go and see if I can imagine the other person's perspective. See the God within them as a result. Realize the God within them. But to do that, I got to first stop seeing them as my enemy, as my adversary, as my whatever, right? I have to see the God within them. And that God within them is being expressed in part through their experiences, just like yours and mine is, right? So how might they see the world or situation? What experiences might they have had in life to shape their perspective? If you do that, you will be amazed at actually how, I'm going to call it rational, sensible, actually people's reactions are. Now, their premises very often are very different than our own, but their experiences led them to certain conclusions, and all of us are ignorant of something in every situation. But we'll generally see, well, here's they see A, B, C, D, here's how they get to E, all right? We were reading instead 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Led us to 5, so we're kind of, well, okay, what's the matter with you? But we got plenty of opportunity in America to work on trying to imagine the other person's perspective. And this is not necessarily everybody's work that everyone's interested in, but for us as mystical students, right? We know we can't harbor hate or ill toward anybody, right? That's God in expression, right? So, as Jesus said, hey, everybody loves their friends. Love your enemies. Impress me, as I guess he said. Okay. Anyway, so here's another thing. When a judgmental thought arises, right? Because that comes up. That's, that can just be a judgmental thought. Doesn't because we dislike somebody, whatever, but that judgmental thought intrudes, right? Consider the following ideas. And you could add 3 more to this yourself, right? There's this first quote, be kind to everyone you meet, for each is fighting a hard battle. Some people said Plato said it, some people said Socrates, somebody said Ian McLaren in 1957 said it. I don't know. But either way, it's really wise. Be kind to everyone you meet, for each is fighting a hard battle, right? Think of that. Think of that if we did that, right? How we would treat and respond to someone differently. He said, then there's the old American Indian saying, before judging someone, we must walk a mile in the other person's moccasins. And the reality is, that's impossible to do, right? You can't. So suspend judgment. And this last one comes a little bit of a twist on a title of a book by a very renowned ballerina. She was, quite prominent in the United States. And the title of her book was, I'm Dancing as Fast as I Can. Right? Everyone's judging, right? So maybe sometimes we think about, when we see that person we're about to judge and realize they're dancing as fast as they can, right? Give them the benefit of that doubt, right? Give them the benefit of that, right? Because if we push these judgmental thoughts out, we will find that the more we push them out, the fewer we will have, right? And we will feel empathy, right? We will feel empathy, which makes us feel love. And the more love we feel to more of humanity and to more living things, the more we will kind of reflect the Creator. So to bypass stereotypes and projections, to experience the person themselves that we're dealing with, do not look at a person through the lens of subgroup identities of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation, national origin, etc. Right? Replace X group does that with people do that. And they're just people, like you and me. We're all just people. Right? So when you find yourself about to look at people through the lens of a group, and it's, bringing about a judgmental response, right? Drop that and just people, because there's nothing anybody does that we assign to any group that people generally don't do. They're just people. Right? And then we can put a label on them. But it's not like anyone's doing something like that from Mars. Like, oh my God, never seen anything like that. Right? So, allow us to see people do that, and we will feel a connection when we kind of turn it from that group does that to people do that. Because realize they're just people. They're just people, right? With all the weakness and challenges that we have, right? So another thing is, another technique, focus on similarities. Concentrate on thoughts of similarities. And so this actually these are techniques that really, again, work right out of neurology as well. When people find a common identity, they reduce the barriers. And we've all experienced this. My best example, the most pointed for me, was being in a country abroad and running into another American. Right now, I might normally think, well, what do I have in common with that person? If I just saw them, at the mall, like, well, I have nothing in common with them. But here we are both in X country. Hey, you're in America. Hey, how you doing? Right? It actually even works with they've studied swans and geese that same way, and they find something in the same group, they go, hey. So look for a common identity. Again, what we're looking for is how to change the reaction in ourselves, right? How do we bring forth the love from ourselves, right? So we're kind of short-circuiting that amygdala that says, ooh, different, don't like them. Ooh, different, not sure about them. Different, no, don't feel comfortable with them, right? So we're trying to short-circuit those things. Remember the common human quest of trying to sort out the world and advance the soul's expression, right? Everybody's trying to do that. No one we meet is any different. And what I like to say, because this is just true, is even that gnat, that little tiny gnat that you see flying around, is trying to do the same things that you and I are, right? How do I find food? How do I avoid discomfort? How do I want to, avoid being killed? How do I reproduce, right? That little gnat is trying to do the exact same thing. We're all trying to do it, right? Right? Do it no harm unless it represents a harm to you, right? Remind oneself that all is God in manifestation. So what I have to do with myself sometimes is remind myself, well, gee, if it's good enough for God, I think I'm, or that's God in manifestation. I treat it a lot differently when I remember that, right? Think, oh, hold it, that's God in manifestation. Brings about something else, right? So all things that we can do to kind of build empathy, develop and express impersonal love. And then we kind of get to divine love. And if we do all that stuff up front, we get to kind of talk about and think about divine love, right? So Louis Claude de Saint-Martin, wonderful, most wonderful mystical French mystic, but Martinism kind of expresses much of the wisdom that he had to share with us. He said, man is a thought of God. How could he not love his own thought? There's a little thing in the middle, but this is kind of to it. So man is a thought of God. Humankind is a thought of God. How could God but not love its own thought, right? So, as we bring ourselves more into harmony and attunement, we get to see the manifestation of that. Love is the natural state of being. We realize this when we reach outside of ego consciousness, which manifests as separateness, the I thou. Right, and as when we look at folks again through near-death experiences, we can see that they recognize this love is all pervasive. Individuals having the experience of cosmic consciousness, one of the things that they universally report is the notion of this loving intelligence being immanent in all that exist. And love puts us on the frequency of the divine nature, enabling us to directly experience the divine love, like attunes with like, right? That's harmony, right? That's what talk about things being brought into harmony. So we're going to close with Rumi on love. Great Sufi mystic. He said, love is the bridge between you and everything. That's the substance, so to speak, that connects us all, in us, between us, etc., right? It's like back to St. Luke in the Acts of the Apostles, that in which we live, move, and have our being. He said, love is not an emotion, it's your very existence. We have to become aware of that, right? So we can experience that divine reality. For those who love with heart and soul, there is no such thing as separation. So let's all work at that. And finally, love is the whole thing. We are only pieces. So with that, anyway, like to close and thank you all for sitting through this or persisting. I hope that we can think about how do we shut down, reduce the activity of that amygdala, those part of the brains that basically are there to protect us, protect our physical bodies. But as we want to ascend beyond simply the consciousness of our physical body, which animals live in solely, right? Is we have to reduce its activity and allow these higher things to course through us. And the beauty of it is they feel wonderful. Matter of fact, the same areas of the brain, or many of the same areas of the brain, get stimulated by love as with beauty also. Obviously, beauty, there might be other senses involved, visual, etc. But love and beauty stimulate similar areas of the brain. So with that, I'd like to say, God bless, peace profound. May we all have a wonderful holiday season, and God bless us all.